Dr. Luskin is a psychologist who has been teaching at Stanford University for the past 30 years. He has a PhD in counseling and health psychology from Stanford University and holds clinical licenses as a psychologist and a marriage and family counselor. Currently, he's on the faculty for the Graduate School of Business Executive Education Program, where he teaches mindfulness, emotional intelligence, psychological safety, and positive psychology to executives from all over the world. And I'm familiar with that program. That's the Stanford Graduate School of Business. When not at Stanford, Dr. Luskin often speaks to a variety of audiences, including investors, corporate leaders, mental health professionals, educators, and several other organizations and individuals. He also serves as director of the Stanford University Forgiveness Projects. The Forgiveness Projects sponsor teaching and research that validate Dr. Luskin's 9 steps to forgiveness. He is one of the world's recognized authorities on forgiveness, both of self and others, and has taught forgiveness to tens of thousands of people. So what a blessing to have you here today, Dr. Luskin. I'm going to spotlight you, and it's all yours. Welcome. We give you a warm Zoom welcome.
Thank you, David. No, it's always an interesting thing when I talk in front of spiritual types, because while nobody wants forgiveness, I mean, they want it for themselves. What they don't want is to give it. Spiritual types do so differently. Like the secular people, they make no bones about that guy was an asshole. Why would I ever forgive him? But the spiritual types have a harder time being honest with that, even though their mind's saying that guy was an asshole or woman was an asshole. Why would I ever forgive him? Because it's really hard to let go of our grasping at negativity to explain why we're not happy enough. Like, been teaching this stuff for a really long time and have had to practice a good deal of it myself. I was married to a woman who came with a very difficult mother, so I had mother-in-law training, life. But forgiveness is the ability to allow life to wound you without ever feeling you have to wound anything back, which is remarkable, and it's outside of even most spiritual folks' normal way of being. It's a stretch for every single one of us. To take the arrows, the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune, and not want to hurt anybody. I mean, that's really a really remarkable feat of love and surrender and kindness. To not have to fight anybody, but also the other hard part is not to become a victim and not to announce yourself as a victim in your welcome. Hi, I'm Fred. I had a crappy mother, or Fred, I had this problem, or Fred, my group was mistreated. That's announcing yourself as a victim, which precludes forgiveness. Forgiveness is, I might have been hurt, but I'm relinquishing my claim and power of victimhood so that I can get back in touch with what's real and what's loving and what's good in my life. And that's not easy. It's really, really, really not easy. One of the things that showed me over the years teaching forgiveness about how hard this is I would remind people that I don't know if you took a look in the mirror, but you're getting older, like that kind of thing. I don't know if you passed by anything lately that reminds you that time is passing. And at one point, you're going to be like either 6 feet under or in an urn somewhere, and nobody's going to give a shit. So, can you let go of the crap you're carrying around because it's temporary? Like, it's just temporary. You don't know how long you have, but you can guarantee at some point nobody's going to give a shit about somebody you were offended by. But people didn't want to do that. One, nobody wants to believe, not nobody, people rarely want to acknowledge they're going to die. So they don't take the program that offers, which is some humility and some wider lens. But forgiveness is one of those that if you really look at the fact that you're going to croak someday and you don't know when it's going to be, it would be really good motivation not to walk around complaining about your past. Like, it would just make sense. You don't have to become like sophisticated or go through, the stuff that we do where we teach people how to do this, make a big deal out of it. You could just remind yourself, boy, am I temporary. I am so temporary. And remind yourself that you own a house here, but it's more like a motel rental. You know what I mean? That you're going to be checking out at some point. And don't get too carried away with the degree of ownership, but that includes the crap. You don't own the crap either. You're just hosting it for a while. Here's my crap. This person treated me badly. That group treated me badly. This person didn't love me. We all have it. It's what we do with it. My understanding then is those of us who forgive has either been born with some grace of a nice big heart, or they have practiced opening that heart up so they don't want to close it back down every time something in life disappoints them or a memory disappoints them. And we can all come up with lots of disappointing memories. There's so many of them. But we don't have to. And when we come up with our disappointing memories, we can accept it. Yeah, in this temporary life, this did happen to me. And it hurt. And now, so what? It hurt. I used to think of being hurt, and I'm not trying to trivialize hurt. I'm actually trying to make everybody recognize that everybody's hurt. But I remember, like, being hurt seemed to me like going to the deli counter and taking a number. Everybody's hurt. Everybody's got a number. And if you don't know it now, at some point in your future, you'll know it. Like, nobody gets out alive. But if you really recognize that, you end up with way more compassion. Because it's not just your hurt, but it's the hurt. I mean, it's everybody's hurt. And you recognize that since you're so temporary, why would you cling to this stuff? And why would you create an identity around it? Why is that who you are? How does that help you be happy? And how does that help you get in touch with spirit or whatever it is, the form your God takes? By being angry at that God? it's a human weakness. All of us have that, to struggle to open our hearts back up. And we come up with all sorts of excuses and all sorts of reasons and all sorts of, fabulous inventions. So I remember when I first started to teach, a long time ago, I would ask everybody in the class, why are you there? And they'd all tell me why they were hurt. And then I realized that not one of them was telling me the truth. Not one. They would say, well, I had crappy parents. And I would say, that's not why you're hurt. You're hurt because you don't know today how to cope with having had crappy parents. Lots of people have crappy parents and aren't hurt right now. It's the second step that you left out that's actually the problem. You didn't know how to deal with your life as it was lived, so that ignorance causes you to continue to not know how to live fully within the actual history that you have experienced. That's not a crime at all. But it's not because your ex-husband dumped you, or he doesn't pay child support, or grandma was a bum, or mom was a bum, or mom and grandma were bums. That may be true. We would never argue anybody out of their suffering. But we remind them that the relative issue is not that suffering occurred, but that you never learned to cope with it. That's the issue. Everybody's got stories of pain. Everybody. Some fewer, some more. Some have really had difficult lives. Some have had very easy lives, relatively speaking. But you all end up losing everyone you love. So nobody has it easy. Nobody. So it's, what do we do with life's difficulties? So the first thing that I would do after teaching for a while is I started asking people to tell me truthful stories rather than just the BS about what bad thing happened to them. Like, you can tell me the BS about what bad thing happened to you, but at least take responsibility for not knowing how to deal with it. And it doesn't minimize what happened to you. What we would suggest to people is, if they'd come in and say, I had a terrible childhood, and there would be no, of course they might have had a terrible childhood, but they were 52. And we would say, well, okay, maybe mom and dad ruined 0 to 20, and then you screwed up 20 to 50 because you didn't know how to deal with mom and dad. And I feel tremendous sadness for your part in it. I can't do anything for mom and dad. But you didn't open your heart back or learn how to cope or become able to grieve your loss or make love out of whatever you can, even if you didn't get a great dose of it when you were a kid. Mary Oliver asks in her poetry, what are you going to do with your one wild and precious life? And that's a question for all of us, no matter what our drama is. What are you going to do with your one wild and precious life? Well, what I have found is that if you investigate more deeply compassion and gratitude, you want to forgive. If you ignore compassion and gratitude, you almost never want to forgive. Most of us who don't want to forgive are really wound up in our wounding. and very disinterested in other people's wounding. So I remember speaking to a class at Stanford, and these were, some people had been badly hurt, and some people had been really terribly treated, and some people had made some real significant mistakes in life. But I remember sitting there asking them, you're all sitting here in this class and really dwelling on things that, some of which happened 5, 10, 15 years ago, when as we sit here, there might be, I don't know, a few million people starving to death in the world, and you don't even notice. So the fact that you don't notice worse suffering shows me that there's an issue with your perception. If you're talking about what happened in 2006 with a full head of steam, partly it's because you haven't paid attention to all the people who have suffered between 2006 and 2024. There's millions and millions and millions of them. Millions. So just broadening the compassion a little bit lowers our temperature a little. Yeah, I was hurt. Not the worst, not the best. Yeah, I was mistreated. Not the worst, not the best. Yeah, life is difficult. Absolutely. Not the worst, not the best. Now, what do I bring my attention to? Just my wounding or the wounding? If I bring it to the wounding, my body doesn't tighten. I'm not flooded with adrenaline, and I'm not on the warpath. If I feel compassion and empathy for the suffering, maybe I want to do something about it that can be helpful, which would be lovely. But when it's just my suffering, or if you're a group of people who insist that your group suffering is worse than everybody else's group suffering, you're probably not doing much good for the world. But if you can lighten the load a little bit of, I got a dose of difficult planet Earth here. Everywhere, in every part of the world, through every moment that human beings have been here, these hurts have existed. Every moment of time on this planet. So now what do I do about it? Part of it is, the other piece that's hard is we have to grieve when we've been hurt. And that requires vulnerability and openness and a willingness to be sad and a willingness to feel fear and a willingness to open to our pain. And when you do that, and you don't carry that as the only pain, you tend to become a better person. I really suffered. Why would I want anybody else to suffer? So that's compassion. The other piece is gratitude. And this is much simpler. If we simply paid attention more to the good that we have, that we take for granted in our life, we'd be better able to handle the stuff that slams us. If we really, really, really paid attention. So whatever that group was that was a while ago, when I asked them, I understand that bad things have happened to you, but as you're sitting here now, people are starving to death. And I'm not saying that's your fault, but just look more carefully at planet Earth. And the other piece of it, you're about to go home to the refrigerator, and you can stop at Whole Foods to buy more. And why aren't you happy about that? Why are you still talking about what happened 8 years ago with the Bomb X? You can go to Whole Foods. What an unbelievable thing. Just shocking. And you don't have to make a big deal of it. And you have a car to get there. And you live in a country where nobody's bombing you. What an amazing thing. What has you missed this? Why are you so focused on what's wrong? And in particular, only what's wrong in your life. So pay attention. Becomes a simple mindfulness. Pay attention to the suffering of others and the abundance in your life. Just pay attention. Slow down. Quiet down. Pay attention. Take a breath. Look out the window. It's beautiful. Take a breath. Realize if you're not in pain at this moment, what an absolute gift that is, right at this moment. Take a breath that if you have food in your refrigerator, you are way high up in the human food chain. It's a slight recalibration of attention, slight. So that instead of leading with, this was the worst shit that ever happened, you start putting it a little more in balance. So, I'm graced with X, Y, and Z. 1, 2, and 3 didn't work out so good. But when you just say 1, 2, and 3 didn't work out so good, you ruin your perception of reality and you no longer see things clearly. One of the practices that we did when we taught regularly was usually at the end of a class, and we'd ask people to divide up into dyads. I mean, we just, what we teach is so simple. It's like complete duh. Like, it's always amazing to me that I get introduced by the way that David introduced me, a fancy Stanford, and I speak at the Graduate School of Business, and I tell people to like give thanks for the fact that you can go to Whole Foods. But one of the practices that we used often was, turn to somebody near you and complain about your life for a minute. Bitch all you want. Give it the best shot you got. And then when you're done bitching for a minute, take the next 30 seconds and remind them of something you're thankful for. That gives your brain a sense of a deeper appreciation of reality. That, yeah, my partner is late all the time, I could say, and it's awful. But she's loving and kind, which is good. But if I just go around telling everybody that she's late, then I'm very distorted in my perception. Very distorted. And since I'm sure you've all heard about the negativity bias in the human brain, which is obsessed with things wrong, you have to be very, very, very careful to quiet down enough that you can bring your attention to other people's suffering and the abundance in your life. And literally when you do that, I mean, there's more to it than this, but literally when you do that, you become more forgiving. You become more forgiving. I thank you for your time. I like doing these things. I, for whatever reason, in all my years of teaching and traveling all over the world, I always like teaching to churches, and just I appreciate that take on our reality. So thank you for inviting me.
I wouldn't be surprised if peace broke out all over. I wouldn't be surprised if I found a 4-leaf clover, 'cause miracles abound. They happen all around me every day. I wouldn't be surprised if we put an end to hunger. I wouldn't be surprised if we just kept getting younger. 'Cause miracles abound, they happen all around me every day. Life keeps blessing me with so much good. I wouldn't change it even if I could. Blessing me in every way, and if it all turns out okay, I wouldn't be surprised. I wouldn't be surprised at all. I wouldn't be surprised if I found out every answer. I won't be surprised when we find a cure for cancer. 'Cause miracles abound, they happen all around me every day. And life keeps blessing me with so much good. I wouldn't change it even if I could, no. Blessing me in every way, and if it all turns out okay, I wouldn't be surprised. I wouldn't be surprised. I wouldn't be surprised. I wouldn't be surprised at all. Life keeps blessing me with so much good. I wouldn't change it even if I could. Blessing me in every way, and if it all turns out okay, I wouldn't be surprised. I wouldn't be surprised at all. I wouldn't be surprised. I wouldn't be surprised at all.